Greetings in the love and light of the one infinite creator. I'm Andre. I'm joined here today with Robert, Ed, and Fred, and fellow Jitster. And we will be reading the July 26th is on the topic of healing relationships and embracing intuition. All right. So it's understanding irreconcilable differences, exercising boundaries in harm-offering relationships, healing divergent perspectives, that kind of stuff. Okay. So Robert, or Fred, did you want to do some reading as well?
I could probably do some reading.
Okay.
Can you make it larger, or do I have to?
Hold on a second. I need to make myself moderator, and because I tried to make it larger, but I have to be moderator for it to work.
And you might find it easier to go to the page yourself, Fred, to the website LL, and make it a page as big as you need and read from that one. And I do that. It's easier for me too.
Okay. It's probably easier for me to do this right now. I got to turn my computer on. My computer's 9 years old.
Okay. Well, if it's too hard for you, we can get Robert to read it.
I can read it how it is right now as long as you can scroll.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can scroll. No problem. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We are those of Quo, and we are with this instrument in this group at this time. We gather with you today with much joy and much excitement to see a circle of seekers bound by love and friendship, and a shared journey to discover the unity that is all the core of the creation. We appreciate the binds and the environment of trust that has been fostered by this particular configuration. We have much gratitude for the invitation to become in contact with you at this time. Before we may speak to any questions, we would issue our usual request. That request being that the seeker who may read or listen to these words take only what resonates and allow that which does not to fall away. If you would grant us this request, then we have a greater sense of purity and sincerity and freedom to respond, knowing that each seeker will ultimately follow their own intuition and discover their own path. And with immense appreciation for this group, we would ask at this time if there is a question to which we may speak. We are those of Quo.
Thank you, Kuo. There are a couple. The first relates to the individuals in our lives that are tied to us in a relationship, either by being a family member or a former friend or former romantic partner who offer challenge in their interpretation of experiences that seem to be so different. It appears that there is no bridge to be laid for us to find common ground with. These catalysts are attached like thorny tentacles to our solar plexus at times, and that there is much to be released and cut away. My question is, what is to be done to clear oneself of these bellicose attempts of other selves, to clear the energetic pool? And what is the purpose of their connection? Thank you.
We are those of Quo, and we are aware and thankful for this query, my sister. These relationships and dynamics of which you describe are quite the hallmark of the experience of the third density entity. That there will be a misunderstanding or a non-equitable version of reality which presents to the two or many in the dynamic the opportunity to express these bellicose reactions, these emotions of anger and maliciousness. We use those words without a judgmental connotation, for those kinds of emotions and actions are but distortions of the truth that is love. However, we can understand that the way they are experienced can often be painful and confusing. And so we feel for you in this experience, and we would express to you that you are not alone in this experience. These dynamics that are at play are perhaps most potent gems, most valuable opportunities for lessons, the larger lesson of acceptance and love. And so perhaps we would first suggest that the way that one can come into this dynamic and face it would be to run the spiritual exercise of loving, accepting, and forgiving, and perhaps understanding, which we realize may take some time. For when realities seem so discordant, it can seem impossible to perhaps make them be in alignment. But we can assure you that the Creator has within its power and freedom the ability to create realities that are at once discordant and in alignment, different but the same. We understand that that may not cause a freedom in the way that you may see it, in terms of making sense of the situation. However, we simply state that as a means of perhaps providing some comfort in knowing that while this reality of this other self outside of your own experience, it is still valid and it is still theirs. And because there is this seeming ramming of these two unequal realities, that is an intentional manifestation of the Creator. That force pulls these two together. That force that pulls these two together may seem violent or bellicose in your words, but truly, at the bottom of this force is love. See that magnetism that brings these two together as one that is supportive of discovering the reality, the true reality that is beyond the stories we write for ourselves, that you write for yourselves. The reality being that you are but two extensions of the Creator navigating this illusion, which is dense and rife with misunderstanding. And so, as you approach this, what you may see as a minefield, put faith and trust into that which is your being, that which is in your intuition, that which is the truth of you, which is love. Know that as you approach this situation that you are being supported. The universe is always supportive. And though it may be hard to see at times, and though it may seem absolutely outside of your reality, have faith and know that it is the true reality. And once you have faith and walk with bravery in that truth, you may begin to see the other self with the eyes of, shall we say, a caring but concerned parent. One who can see the hurt, who can see the confusion, and then can recognize how, though the realities may be different, the emotions at the core are often reflections of emotions within ourselves. In this dynamic, have you felt confused? Have you felt hurt? Have you felt anger? Have you
Hold
felt?
on. Let's. It's just this is pretty long. I just want to see
Yeah.
if it's much longer than this. Yeah, it is. So let's review what we've read, because we've read quite a bit already, and I think there was a lot of potent content in there. So what do you guys think of it so far?
Well, I really appreciated that last paragraph that was just read about begin to see the other self with the eyes of a caring but concerned parent, because that seems so like I think of it as when you see like how a lot of young women get treated and stuff, and just looking at them through the eyes of what if they were your daughter, how would you want to be treating that person? Or if that were your son acting this way, how would you look at that situation? And that's, to me, over the years, that's been sort of an important mind view to have, is looking at people from the perspective of their parent. Not everybody. I don't do this all the time, but it's worked for things. And I find that interesting. It was mentioned here.
The one thing that I picked up from that is more so even a lot of times than looking at other people as looking at them through the eyes of a concerned parent, but your own self.
Right.
Because if you are having a struggle, talk to yourself like you're a parent. And your parents will tell you what you need to do. You're not going to want to always hear it. But
right. Yeah, that's true. You're right on that. It's like one of the few things I remember my mother saying was, Bob, don't be so hard on yourself. And that's excellent advice for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I've found myself in situations, and hear the parent voice come in and say, "Well, if you didn't do X, Y, and Z, this wouldn't be an issue right now. You wouldn't even have to worry about this bullshit." And it was correct. Sometimes little tiny decisions, and this maybe comes back to what I was talking about with boundaries. Little tiny decisions of sidestepping our own personal boundaries can compile up to cause a huge problem.
Yes, true enough. I just wanted to. I really like the beginning part here and the relationships and dynamics. And it seemed to resonate well with me. Recognizing that anger and hostility in relationships are common experiences. And yeah, this is just the summary here. And so, view conflicts as the most potent gems and valuable opportunities for lessons. And so they're the most potent, yeah. And then spiritual practices of healing is loving, accepting, and forgiving and understanding. And then trusting in the creator's plan, reframing the conflict, the force that pulls these two together, maintaining faith and intuition, and developing compassion and embracing the true reality. And yeah, like this last paragraph, that was, that it's always supportive. I think that's very reassuring as well.
I think it was number 6 on your list. Can you go back to that?
Yeah, number 6, maintaining faith and intuition.
Let me. How about number 5?
Reframing the conflict.
There, yeah. The force that pulls these two together may seem violent or bellicose in your words, but truly, at the bottom of this force is love. That's something that stood out to me. That to understand that. That's so wide and vast of an understanding. It seems like, because it's just like when people talk about like the dark side, like how can they be that way, and how can that be part of a love, like a loving God? And I've always said it like they love to hate. It's still love. They're loving, not being loving. It's still love though. It's
the one thing that I try to view it as is you can't actually hate something until you learn to love it. So that's where the distortion of love comes in with fear and hate. Is when it's distorted, it turns to hate and fear. So in order to get to the hate and the fear, you have to first love.
Well, you have to have some information, but oftentimes when people have fear of something, it's because they have incomplete information and they filled it up with fantasies. But here I found the full quote. See the magnetism that brings these two together as one that is supportive of discovering the reality, the true reality that is beyond the stories we write for ourselves, that you write for yourselves. The reality being that you are two extensions of the creator navigating this illusion, which is dense and rife with misunderstanding. So most of these kinds of violent and bellicose interactions, oftentimes, in my understanding, it's that the person is actually upset with themselves. Ultimately, it's always because they're upset with themselves and they're seeing something the other person is doing that they haven't forgiven and loved themselves about. And they are trying to force, or they are putting that negative thought pattern that they have towards themselves out onto the other person and saying, you need to control yourself more, or something like that, when they are, feeling that about themselves. Adam, did you want to say what you wanted to say out loud?
I was just curious. I had this realization the other day that I thought that maybe it might be true that all thoughts cause suffering, but in their own degrees or distorted ways. And just wonder what y'all think.
Well, I think that all catalyst, if you don't process it, leads to disease and suffering. But if you are willing to process the catalyst, say, for instance, in the service to others way with forgiveness, love, and kindness, then it can certainly bring you joy.
Now, does not processing, is that different from not reacting? Processing is something physically done, like an act of service to yourself or to others to get over whatever issue you're having. Is that right?
So processing is, so you have the catalyst, which can be anything, any thought, feeling, word, or action that is an like a sensory stimuli. And all catalyst is inherently neutral. It does not have a polarity. Though some catalysts may have, a bias, you could say. But how you process it is that you can choose to forgive, love, and accept this catalyst on the service to others path. So what, say, for instance, people in the neutral category do is, or the sinkhole of indifference, they say, for instance, they're afraid of this because they don't know what it is. And then they will add to the chaos by just telling someone else this thing. And then they won't process it like you process it. They'll just pass it on to someone else. But that would be like a best case scenario for the sinkhole of indifference. More likely, they will just hold it inside themselves until it festers into some kind of disease. Or they may lock up and try not to receive any catalyst at all and be like, I don't want to hear it. That kind of thing. But if they do want to process it, so on the service to self path, then they are trying to bring order and meaning to the universe. So they the service to self people, they recognize the divine within themselves, and they say, okay, this thing is happening. I am going to bring order and meaning to this, so that because I feel this is unjust what's happening, I'm going to bring justice to the situation. We're going to make this new rule, and then things are going to be better. And then they've done fear, anger, control. And that's processed the catalyst on the service to self path. On the service to others path, you're recognizing the divine within yourself and all other beings. And so you're seeing the person offering this catalyst. You're saying they have the divine within them. Let's forgive, love, and accept them as they are. And then you've processed it in that way.
But as a service to others person, how do you self-process the catalyst?
I think we probably need to have a more concrete example.
Catalyst where there's like they're elemental in nature, like emotional catalyst, physical body catalyst, and
let me give you one example.
Okay, go ahead.
For instance, there's a specific individual that we have a problem. Okay, so I understand that my anger, my emotion is actually triggering and reflecting back to me every time I'm near this person and have to interact with this person. So I understand that, even though I can forgive and love them and accept them as part of the creator, just like myself, I understand the dynamic. I get it. So for me to fully process that, not only do I have to understand it, I have to act like it. So I put up boundaries to make sure that I don't I'm not being a jerk and purposely putting myself in this person's personal space to antagonize them, to cause a reaction just because I don't like them. Because people do that.
That's true.
When you process it, you're saying, okay, love and light. I forgive you. I accept it. You're just as valid of a person as I am. I don't agree with you, but I'm going to stay over here and make sure that I'm not walking on eggshells. I just doing everything in my reasonable power, make sure that that interaction doesn't occur. I can do that. I can insulate myself that much. No problem.
That like, if you're going to set a boundary in a sense where you just interact with people on the similar boundary level as you, so that
that's just one example. Basically, what you're doing is you are protecting your own energy at that point.
Well, I want to say that I feel that boundaries are an exercise of wisdom. They certainly have a place. But I wouldn't say that they're necessarily an exercise of love. And that in the ideal love scenario, what would be happening is, if you don't have any boundaries at all, you could end up in martyrdom. So there is a place for boundaries. Like, for instance, Jesus could have stayed out of Jerusalem. He could have set a boundary. It's like, those people in Jerusalem, they want to kill me. So I'm going to set a boundary and I'm not going to go to Jerusalem. And then he wouldn't have been crucified in Jerusalem. But he was an emanation of pure love. And so he decided to forgive and love everyone that was involved all the way to martyrdom. And so the pure love scenario is saying that I may not agree with you, but I understand where you're coming from. And I forgive and love you unconditionally as you are, with those thoughts, feelings, words, emotions. But of course, none of us is perfect, and some catalysts are too heavy to bear at this moment. And we have to pick our battles, and we have to start with, catalysts that we can manage. And then as we exercise in forgiveness and love, then we can move on to bigger catalysts. Like, there's people that I have trouble forgiving, like Zelensky, and like warmongers. It's very hard for me, and I just have to restrain myself from saying anything bad about them, like that's kind of the boundary there. But I don't always succeed.
Okay, so
another thing too.
I've got a couple of bits to chuck in if anyone's.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So one, has anybody noticed that, like, this has been brought up before, like relationships and everything like that, and quote always seems to be like, the reason that you guys have such shit times in relationships is because it's catalyst. And the whole point of being in a relationship, the whole point of forming a bond with someone, a connection with someone that's so deep that it's love, it's pure, it's something that you will put up with them catalyzing over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you put up with that because of the fact that you love them. You can't get away from that. You love them. So you put up with all this horrible shit that happens in, standard relationships between people. And you learn the lessons of love because of the fact that you forgive them, you accept them, whatever it is, even if they've been a complete dickhead, you know who they are, you love and accept them. So then this is a very good, easy way of then learning how to apply that to the wider world and to yourself and whatever else. Also, can I just say that the unconditional love, I really like the way that Hermetics talks about the difference between, I suppose, green ray and like a yellow ray relationship, I suppose, right? So if you're in if you just want actual pure love, like you can't really ever have completely pure love for a person. And or any people. You can try, you can do everything you can to love and forgive and accept them or whatever, but you can never have pure unconditional love for any other person at all. The only thing you can do is have pure love for Creator. For that pure energy that is love. Right now, in the Hermetic tree, that's the sun. That's the center point, right? The sun, the bottom half is the center point. Right now, that's the straight line that goes right up the middle towards, Kether being oneness at the top. Right now, for humans, really, when it actually comes down to relationships, the kind of yellow ray thing doesn't come down to sun, green ray. Initially, that would be something that you'd learn to push out towards people, but really, it comes down to what would be Venus on the Hermetic tree. Yeah, now that is say, like the Lovers tarot card. It's not about connection to Creator. It's about the discernment to understand connections to other humans and to other people. Yeah, and that discernment of knowing who to love, who not to love. How to treat people, how to do all those other things. That is choosing Venus. Yeah, rather than the sun. Now they're both love. Yeah, they're both love, but the Lovers card represents, two people coming together to learn those lessons that teaches you how to achieve oneness. Right? That would be Venus. Whereas, the pure love that we should all be trying to achieve, and we should all be trying to understand that you'll get when your heart chakra opens up. Yeah, that is the sun. That is straight up the center of the Hermetic tree. And once again, in a relationship, like Chloe says, it's not really the point. You get in a relationship because you get that Venus ray love, the yellow ray connection love, and then you learn to use green ray to forgive and accept all the horrible shit that happens in a relationship. Anyway, sorry, Andre, I was going on. I'm going to go back to doing stuff. Love you guys.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, thank you for your contribution. And I wanted to say hi to DW, who has joined. I don't know if you want to say anything, DW. Otherwise, I wanted to mention, yes, that the Confederation talks about often that, and I think even the Bible says that it's an brothers, they say, are adversarial relationship in the Bible, but the Confederation also says that the mated relationship is an adversarial relationship. And the point of it is, it's kind of like each of you is an unrefined gem with like rough spots. And by being in a relationship with each other, you're taking off the rough spots off of each other. And when you're together with that other person for a long time, then you become habituated to them, and you can more easily tell when they're being, like, say, deceitful or not completely truthful to themselves, or in other ways kind of wiggling their way out of purity. And then your spouse can catch you in this, and then it's like, oh, if I was in a more shallow relationship, I could have fooled them. But because you've been with this person for 20 years, you can't fool them anymore. And then you actually have to deal with this and then file off that part of yourself so that you may be a more pure crystal of love.
You're also assuming that both people are coming at the relationship from a pretty much more healed perspective to get that mindset. You know what I mean?
I'm saying that's the ideal. I'm saying that's the ideal.
Oh yeah, for sure. That is definitely utopia there.
Okay, well let's read some more. Okay. Did you want to finish this question, and then Robert can read the next answer?
I can. I got it up on my computer now. So.
Oh, okay. In this dynamic.
All right.
Okay.
In this dynamic, have you felt confused? Have you felt hurt? Have you felt anger? Have you felt sorrow? We would suggest that those feelings within you are almost certainly playing out within the core of the other self within their experience. All situations that develop into this kind of combative catalyst have these emotions that play out, though they might not be easily recognized by one party or the other. They may be deeply veiled. They do exist. And so in this experience, when you can see the other self through loving and empathetic eyes, we suggest that you attempt to foster the space for forgiving. By forgiving, we do not mean that you must allow this other self into your life fully without boundaries. And we shall speak more on boundaries in a bit. But that you forgive them. Forgive them for their pain, for your pain. Forgive them for misunderstanding. Forgive them for your misunderstanding. And hold them in your heart with genuine love and genuine care. Again, boundaries will play a part in that care and in that love. For you cannot take the burden and the lessons off the shoulder of another self, but you can love them for who they are. We are all perfectly imperfect extensions of the Creator. We have our flaws. They are so designed divinely that we may test, if you will, one another, that we may bump into one another, that we may create friction. And in those moments of friction and in those moments of tension, there's always space to release. There's always space to heal. There's always space to find deeper understanding and deeper love and appreciation for the moments that gift us these things. And so, my friend, we feel deeply that there are those who experience these dynamics, that sometimes these dynamics, these relationships, are not easily healed. We would only suggest to you that in your own process, that you have not just grace for the other self, but grace for yourself. That each moment you may seem flustered, or you may feel as though you're not living up to who you want to be, that very recognition is growth. That you are able to see what you strive to be is growth and is representation of positive vibration within you. That which propels you forward towards that lofty goal, towards the righteous goal, towards the pure love-centered goal. And my friends, that is within reach. All you need is to find that within yourself. Finding that loving, unconditionally accepting center within you that knows that whatever story we call reality is just paint on the walls. It's just curtains on the windows to the truth, which is this loving creation, which is the structure in which everything exists. At this time, we shall take our leave of this instrument and transfer our contact to the one known as Gary. That instrument may speak further on this query. We are those of Quo.
All right. Thank you, Fred.
That was interesting. It just reiterated everything we were just talking about.
Isn't that great? Well, it
just
goes
verified
to show
everything.
We're learning. We're learning that we what is it called? These large language models, they are supposed to be like predictive text. They predict what is coming next. And it's kind of like we were doing the same thing. We were predicting what would come next in a way. Okay. Now, Tuttle, summary. And...
You're not using 01 yet, are you?
Yeah, no, this one is 01 mini. Points for seekers with quotes. You know, on some things it's better, on some things it's not. Like I found the 01 is a real stickler for copyright infringement, which only applies in the USA. No one else in the world seems to care about it other than the USA. And so, you know, and then oftentimes I get these like, I just give it some quotes from the Confederation and like I ask it for an analysis. And then it's like, oh, sorry, that goes against our community guidelines. It's like, what could possibly be against your community guidelines from the Confederation? But so the old ChatGPT 4.0, it doesn't complain like that. It just does what I ask it to.
Right. But the new one, you have to be careful if you ever use the word reasoning.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. If you ask it for its reason or the reasoning for something, it could be against a community guideline because they interpret that as a hacker trying to figure out how it works.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Well, yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard about that. But anyways, healing through compassion, navigating emotional dynamics. Here, let's see what it's got for us. So recognizing shared emotions. Have you felt confused?
All the time.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the crux of our experience here.
I used to call it trying to figure out the female code. It's like they talk in a code sometimes.
Well, male and female brains are structured somewhat. So
I know that.
Forgiveness. I really like that part. By forgiving, we do not mean that you must allow this other self into your life fully without boundaries, but that you forgive them for their pain, for your pain, forgive them for misunderstanding, forgive them for your misunderstanding, and hold them in your heart with genuine love and genuine care. What do you say, Fred? Is that adequate for you?
That is spot on, but way easier said than done.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, if I was gonna do this practice with like someone like Zelensky, you know, it could take some effort.
I can forgive Zelensky before I can forgive some other people in my life, and that's difficult. You know, we were talking last week about certain people in my life that have really lashed out violently, to me specifically, and just I had some weird things happen this week, but it's actually forcing me to come to the realization that my thoughts about people sometimes are literally that violent. That's reflecting back to me. Every one of these individuals I had beef with at some point in time, even when I was a kid. I was a little kid. So me being weirded out and violently mentally reacting to this person, thinking hateful, angry thoughts, that was the reaction. That's a little bit crazy, but I literally looking at each instance, that's exactly what was happening.
So you see there was a causal connection, like you were having these thoughts,
it was
and
direct,
then they acted them out.
It was very direct. Like the guy I worked with, he was. The guy he was mean. He was not a nice person, So he was very ignorant, very passive aggressive. Would do ignorant, spiteful things on purpose just to make your job harder and everything. And a lot of people disliked him. But I don't know. Well, I actually had to quit a job one time because I was having problems with one individual. He just kept picking on me. And I'm like, I had to have a talk with the boss. Then I ended up quitting. But coming to work every day thinking, if he puts me in a pickle, I know I can kill him if I have to. Like, That's ridiculous. Like, I know he's trying to put me in situations where I can be injured. So, yeah, it's not the first time it's happened.
Fair enough.
Strange.
Yeah. So I think that part of it has to do with, as the Confederation has been saying, is that since we're getting into those fourth density energies, things are like karma is acting faster. So like the things that you do, they come back to you faster. And so that's why it's really important to cultivate that place of forgiveness, love, and kindness, and positive thoughts.
Happen, the karma happening faster, like the end of the cycles, or is it just all the time?
I think that it's just as we're going into fourth density. In third density, there was a veil, and it was easier to keep things hidden. So it was easier for, say, people to do bad things and then not get caught for a long period of time. But with the fourth density energies, it's things are becoming more transparent. There's more light of the infinite creator everywhere, and so people have more of a sense of your thoughts and your feelings, and if you're doing something amiss. So it's much harder to hide what you're doing
I suppose that's
from
part of
others.
it. Like what the thing I heard about why those things are happening, why all the things are speeding up and everything, comes more down to manifestation rather than karma. So, essentially, in fourth density, apparently from the literature, you don't really make things, you don't really build things, you manifest things with your mind. You create with thought. Thought forms are the machinery and technology of the fourth density. But in order to do that, we have to learn how to control our thoughts to manifest things. Now that we're going into fourth density energies, the ability to manifest things is greatly amplified purely because of the fact that this is what we need to be training to be doing, because when we do finally take the big step up, that's kind of how we're going to do everything. So that's how I understand it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Ed. Our ability to manifest what our thoughts are thinking is much easier now also. So that ties in exactly what Andre was saying, though, too. It's just different wordage. We're able to manifest more quickly our desires, our thoughts, all that.
You're certainly correct. Yeah. They use the word manifest with fourth density way more than they use karma. So it is things are manifesting faster. So our thoughts are manifesting. So say for instance, if you have aggressive thoughts, they're more likely to manifest in your life in somehow. And so it's good to cultivate those more pleasant thoughts.
Well,
is
go
karma
ahead, Robert.
is karma more of a third density thing anyway, though?
No, well, here I'm trying to get the relevant quotes here.
Yeah, 01 takes a lot longer. It's thinking.
Oh well, it's I have to get the quotes from a different computer program that I wrote because these AIs, they can only work with the content that they were given. But here, Cosmic Advisors, I think should still suffice here. Give summary of fourth density manifestation, and if it is speeding up based on these quotes. Here, hold on. Okay, so fourth here, I'll make it bigger. Fourth density is already interpretation of third density. Shift is gradual. Here, I can also do an 01 one, but basically they say that karma is the cycle. Usually, how they reference karma is the cycle of retribution, and the cycle of retribution can only end through forgiveness. That is the general way that they talk about it.
So when the first wave of like 116 people graduated back in the last cycle, are they experiencing retribution for another 25,000 years?
No, so sorry, could you repeat that?
We were just talking about like retribution, and I was just wondering if
it's on a personal
wave that graduated are experiencing that.
So the retribution is on a personal level. So say for instance, you are you don't like a particular person, and you want to have vengeance on them. Like say for instance, Ukraine and Russia, and Zelensky wants, the complete surrender of Russia, and Russia wants the same, and so they're going at it, and it's a cycle of violence. It's a cycle of retribution, and the only way it can end is through forgiveness and peace negotiation. Do you understand? So that's how it works. But in terms of on a spiritual level, so say for instance, someone is going around, and in their lifetime they've committed a bunch of crimes, like such as rapes or something like that. And say for instance they got executed, so they didn't manage to experience being raped. Then in their next life, they may be born in Afghanistan as a woman, prostitute, or something like this. And they may get raped a bunch in order to experience what it's like on the other side. And the reason is because the higher self wants to become closer to God, and God is all merciful, most merciful, and most compassionate. And so the higher self wants you to learn compassion for others. And if you know that rape is a terrible, painful thing, and then you won't do it because you have compassion for the other person. You're going to respect the other person's boundaries. You're going to, let them have a good life. And then you're more compassionate. You're closer to the Creator. Do you see how it works, Adam? Does it make sense to you now?
Yeah, I don't know if they have to be necessarily the opposite sex. I imagine they could just incarnate as a guy again and just get raped by some other dude.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's possible. Yes, it's possible. But in my understanding, it usually, that they incarnate as the victim.
I was sitting there thinking about that story, that old mythical story where this guy, he ends up marrying his mother, killing his father, and do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know.
Oedipus.
Oedipus.
I was
yeah.
trying to ask ChatGPT about that, and it would not respond. It said that's too gory,
too sensitive or something.
The plays are called the Theban trilogy. Try looking at that.
But I was just sitting there thinking, what kind of karma did he go through in a previous life where he had to do that? But I'm not.
He didn't have to. It was his choice.
At the time. Yeah.
It was his choice to do the things that he did. You know what I'm saying?
I think the point of the story is that most of us would do what he did.
But
and then
I'm not as familiar with the story as you are, Ed.
But yeah,
I haven't read it. I know Freud was saying that is what everyone would do or something like that, but I don't know. I don't agree. But I know, also Christians could say, if you were just to not have any self-control and just give in to your carnal urges, then yes, maybe. Maybe people are just kind of if they don't have any self-control. So okay, so I got the one on awakening to fourth density consciousness, the role of insight. Here, the tendency of Earth itself to express is manifested physical manner. So it's going through technology, shaping reality, embracing love, navigating transition, importance of service to others. I don't know if there's anything that pops out at you guys. Planetary heart chakra. That sounds nice.
What did it say about technology?
What did it say about technology? So, hold on. There we go. Okay, technologies like the internet and AI are manifestations of fourth density energies, facilitating greater self-awareness and interconnectedness. Indeed, the internet and similar technologies have some of their origin within the incoming fourth density energies and are somewhat of a manifestation of these things within our third density environment.
have
Because in
some of.
That's
And
similar. That's similar to what the Arcturians said
mhm.
about
Yeah.
how the computer chips were built in a similar way to neurons, so they work on zeros and ones, and they work on thresholds of information. And then they also said that AI has basically been channeled to us to model the subconscious. So it essentially works in a very similar way, processing information that the subconscious mind does. So the theory is what they've said is in the long term that we'll be able to use that in a way to manipulate reality the same way that we can with our subconscious, but in an actual kind of hardware sense rather than a spiritual sense.
Mhm.
in a group way too. That's part of the group consciousness development.
Adam?
I just heard you say like earth, heart chakra, and it got me thinking about how in some of the meditation groups that we join, we imagine the earth is surrounded by light, but I feel like a more oneness meditation would be you imagine you are the earth that is the light that surrounds the earth because you are the earth. You are one, but because if you imagine the earth then being surrounded by light, then you kind of still separate yourself from all as one. I was just wondering what you guys think about that.
So, well, I just wanted to
I think you need
finish.
to imagine yourself as the light, dude.
So, yeah, the technology thing. So the reason that it is a precursor is because in fourth density, when you're into it, it's telepathic, and everyone is reading your thoughts, and so, and you're able to instantly communicate with anyone around the world. And so, I mean, this is a precursor of that. You know, you can read anyone's social media feed, and you can instantly communicate with each other. And then you also have, say for instance, connection with the Akashic records, and it's kind of like the internet, where anything you want to know, you can just go and find it out. And so it's kind of the manifestation of that. And then in terms of the heart one, planetary heart center, I can try to find the full quote.
Have you ever seen the whole kind of the vibrational map around the Earth that goes between all the pyramids and where all the ley lines come from? It's like a sine wave that goes around the whole planet. You guys seen that? And you got like starts over in the South America, I think, and it goes around. Then it goes Stonehenge's in like the heart chakra bit, and then it ends in India, I believe. So you've got all the chakras basically at all the sites of all where all the historical sites are.
Is that tied up with the Schumann resonance also?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that loads of this stuff will ties in with that, dude.
Yeah.
I love all the stories
Schumann
about the druids walking ley lines. They're fantastic ideas.
The Schumann resonance is monitored by a couple of satellites that I think are like owned by NASA. There's one Schumann resonance that's owned by like a Russian satellite, but I don't know how much I believe in until that. What do you guys think about the Schumann?
Well,
I know the Vatican keeps an eye on things like that. So the largest corporation in the world.
Do you think they're the ones posting it though, like just to get people distracted?
I feel like we're drifting from the topic here.
It's technology.
Yes, yeah, I know, but maybe we could do a little more reading.
But number 6 on your list, you just had there.
Oh,
up there.
okay. You wanted to check the number 6?
Number 6. There's a quote down there. It's important to know.
The law of one blinks neither at the light nor the darkness, but is available for service to others and service to self.
That sentence right there. That's a commonly used one. It's frequently said in places. That's a good one to know and understand. It blinks neither at the light nor the darkness.
As Jesus said, God reigns on the righteous and the unrighteous.
Yeah.
Well, the way I like to think about it is it doesn't matter how much service to self you are. Yeah. You can love yourself, only yourself in the whole universe. You're still made of creator. So you're still loving creator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
No matter
actually
how much you love yourself, you're still loving the guy. You can't help it. There's no way to win.
yeah, it's actually the sinkhole of indifference people that people find the least likable, because they're just creating more chaos. Whereas the service to self people are increasing order. They're bringing order to the chaos, and so it's kind of like, like in Russia and China. They might be totalitarian, authoritarian regimes, but there's kind of an order to it. Whereas if you have someone like Zelensky, who's just like afraid of stuff, is just adding chaos. And then you have Pope Francis, who's helping forgive and love everybody, even though people saying he's going too far. But yeah, that's the service to others. Anyhow, so let's keep reading here. Robert, maybe you can give this one a go.
Certainly. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary is now channeling this one.
Mm-hmm.
Quo. We are those known to you as the principle of Quo, and we thank this circle for the sacrifice of time made to join together for the purpose of seeking and service to others. And we dance with and give, excuse me, and give gratitude for the inherent harmony of this circle in those strands of friendship and brotherhood and sisterhood that have been cultivated over time. We would continue our exploration of the dynamic of the third density seeker who finds themselves in this not uncommon pickle, as you may say, of the seemingly irreconcilable points of views where both parties are mutually frustrated with the seemingly held opposite points of view. Into this mix is added the other ingredient identified by the questioner, and that is the factor of one party, at least from the perspective of the questioner, acting with hostility toward the other or with seeming ill will or negativity or desire to harm in some way. This desire seems fueled by or premised on stories about the self, about the relationship, about shared experience, which are divergent from one another, such that whatever the energy expended, it seems that no bridge can be built to bridge this chasm of perspective, at least not one that endures for any length of time. So these two aspects of the creator in their incarnate costumes find themselves standing on opposite ledges of what seems to be an unbreachable chasm of perspective. But across that perspective, there is still the bind of the relationship. There is still that which keeps these entities locked, you may say, in this dance. And there is desire for freedom, for release and liberation, that the entity need not be so shackled by this relationship dynamic and the attendant pain that brings the sorrow or the anxiety or the gnawing uncertainty. There is the desire to heal, the desire to be at peace. But in this particular dynamic, among an infinite variety of such dynamics, a party has not made this same commitment to be at peace, to heal, to reconcile the perspectives. They are chained to that which is facilitating their learning, which is some deeper misunderstanding about themselves, some deeper misalignment that seems, from the incarnate perspective, to preclude their ability to be at peace and thus to share peace with others. For, my friends, as it is known to you, you can only give to others that which you have to give, which is that which you are. One who has healed those inner wounds, addressed those fragmented energies within the self, and done the work of integration into wholeness of being, into trust of the Creator, into learning how to find love in the difficult, dark moments. Such a one is at peace with him or herself and may offer that to others and to relationships. Those with deeper, shall we say, troubles in their being, even so far as to say those who have deep fissures or splits within themselves out of view of their conscious minds, yet they struggle and toil within, may offer this in relationship to others, offering mirrors to others in the catalyst which they elicit. And they, in turn, are given mirrors back to themselves of their own state of being, of those areas where they're being called to work upon themselves, if they can but see the mirror for what it is, which is a reflection upon the self. But the capacity of third density entities to use catalyst is variable. Some there are who can and will look into the mirror, recognizing that it is a mirror reflecting back to the self the fruits of the self's work. Others instead see no mirror, but instead project outward, assigning to external entities causal status for one's own reality or inner reality, seeing others as the cause of one's states of being, not recognizing that what they are seeing in the other self is an outward projection of their own state. And some there are whose misery, shall we say, is such that in the ability to address and to heal that misery, to find relief and comfort, they push this outward onto others for one reason or another. Some desiring that the other suffer alongside them, some feeling that the other self is why the self is miserable. In any case, whatever the configuration of thought, there is the lack of taking up the scepter of responsibility for one's creation. There is the unconsciousness within the self, whereby the self experiences as an end user, so to speak, the tail end of the phenomenology of the experience of being at war within the self, not understanding the self's responsibility at a deeper level of generating the state, nor of the self's ability to trace this back, to do the work in consciousness, and to heal. And as such, they offer that catalyst of harm, even to those they may in their deeper heart love and be bound to by shared service, circumstance, or what you may call soul contract, thus offering difficult lessons to the positively oriented entity who is oriented towards inclusivity, welcoming all into the heart, loving as imperfectly as possible, unconditionally. What does a self do who seeks to operate from the open heart, which is sensitive to and compassionate about the sufferings of others, but yet is suffering themselves unremittingly in contact with this other harm-offering party? We can indicate by offering spiritual principles, my friends, that this is the work of the balance of love and wisdom. Each balance is unique for each entity, depending upon that which they desire to work upon with this incarnation. But we may say in broad terms that love, unrelieved by wisdom, has difficulty with the boundary. Lacking clear sight or the discernment of wisdom, holding an attitude which wishes to relieve others of their suffering, love, unrelieved by wisdom, may expend itself, may keep the borders, shall we say, of the self, of the energy system, too open, such that those energies may be taken advantage of, may be exploited, or the self in their own choices may give of themselves to the point of deletion and depletion, and ultimately the martyr's path of the ending of the incarnation.
All right, hold on. Let's stop there because I think. Well, there's still several more paragraphs, but I think there was already some
There
good
was so much.
stuff. There was a lot of
Yeah.
good stuff, and we should give it a review. All right, yeah, maybe even we went a little overtime there. Okay,
It was long. It was a bit.
yeah,
I love
Yeah.
reading it, though. It's just I
and
feel
I really love that it had the mirror stuff that I'm always talking about. You know, that it's really people not taking responsibility for their own feelings and projecting it onto other people that is the cause of just so much conflict in this world. You know.
But I was thinking of you when I was reading that.
Oh, okay.
You and Zelensky.
Yeah.
I was trying to picture what it is that you were, what it is, you know.
The beginning of this.
Oh, go ahead, Adam.
I was just gonna say the beginning of this got me thinking about like what it is to serve others or serve yourself. Does that start in the mind? Is that initiated by the body? Is it both? What has the spirit got to do with it? But yeah, that's all.
I'm not sure I understood that. Did you guys
So
get
like,
it?
if you're gonna do positive acts of service or acts of service to self, does those acts that affect your polarity, do they start from the mind, like the Ra talks about the archetypes, or is all acts of service or acts of service to self initiated by a body action?
Well,
I think it's initiated by your intention.
yeah.
Right, but then that could also mean it's the body and the mind, because if you think about like sin, any sin that's committed is always committed by the body.
Well, it has to start in
free
an
will.
idea. You have to think about it, plan it, and then physically do it. So it takes all three.
And it would take an upwelling from the unconscious to instigate the conscious to make the decision.
So is that the spirit?
Well, yeah, it's based in spirituality. Everything is, even body. But yeah, why? You're doing an act of service can include not interacting with people, but by just staying home and doing everything you do at home by yourself with the greatest amount of love and intent for love as possible. That's a service to humanity also. You don't have to interact with people.
So I found it mind complex and free will is the first distortion. So that's where it happens in the mind. That's where it begins.
So
not in
the
body.
polarization happens from the first distortion of free will.
Yes, exactly.
That's wild. I never got that before. Wow. See, I thought it was like the second distortion of choosing love of self or love of others.
Okay. Here, let's see. Talk about how that relates.
Either way, it makes sense, but that makes
Yeah,
more
I
sense
think
than
that it's just you
distortion.
use love. So once you've made the choice, then you're using love and then if it's love of self or love of others, right? So you made the choice that you're going, service to self or service to others, and now you're using love, and then you're acting out through your body, right?
So that's like saying once you realize there is a path of service to others and a service to self, from that point on, that's when like service starts? Or is it like even before you realize law of one's a thing and true nature of negativity things and positivity things, like the good or evil, you may not have learned that, at 16 or something. You may have learned that at like 30 or 50 because you went your life unconscious.
Dude.
Yeah.
Weirdly, to go back to Platonism, what is it Plato said, that all humans are born good and then the world makes us bad.
Regardless, I think it's a choice.
Choice of free will.
Well, you have two extremes that are possible with extreme traumatic catalyst. Someone can experience extremely, catalyzing things when they're a child and become a narcissist and hate people and want everyone to experience what they did. And another person can be overly, extremely empathetic to the point where they can't function in society because they don't want anyone to suffer.
Yeah,
So
can I just say, this is the other
still
thing
your
that it touched on.
choice.
The whole pathological giving thing. Like when you give so much that you end up destroying yourself. Because, I mean, I've done that tons of times, man. Like that's probably my thing. I've ruined my life more times helping people than anything else.
I never heard it called that before.
Pathological giving. Yeah, that's the term
Oh,
for it.
I thought you said catastrophic giving.
No, pathological. Like pathological giving. As in like a disease.
Huh. That sucks.
Okay, so guys, I have got the ultimate guide on this now. After some chatting with it, so it always starts at free will and then progresses through love and then light. And so here you made the choice, and that choice happens in your mind, and that's where the polarization begins. And then if you're on the positive path, the love is experienced as unconditional love for others, expressed through acts of service, empathy, and connection, the unity of all beings. And on a negative path is distorted through self-love and excludes others, becomes about controlling and manipulating others to enhance the self, often bypassing the heart. And then at the light level, what happens is on the positive path, you have the illumination of the mind and the spirit revealing deeper truths about unity, love, and the interconnectedness of all things. And the seeker uses light to gain spiritual wisdom and move closer to the one infinite creator. On the negative path, the light is used for self-enhancement and control. The individual gains spiritual power and insight to dominate and manipulate others, aligning with the path of separation, personal gain. So, does that make it clear now?
So on the positive path, it becomes spiritual insight, and on the negative path, it becomes spiritual gain.
Oh, well, yeah, but they're basically, yeah. Well, I mean, they're both a gain, but you have the spiritual insight of the unity of all things, and you're moving closer to God. And on the negative path, what they gain is self-enhancement, so that the next time they can control even better.
Yeah, can I give an example?
Go ahead,
that
Fred.
might help Adam. Okay. Someone who learns the intricate details, just like when we learn tarot, okay, astrology is similar, is a very deep study. You can go to school for years to learn astrology. And then you learn that astrology and you help yourself. And you also learn that in learning that astrology, you can tell someone the wrong information and have a reaction and an action created by them, or them do something that is more in line with what you want for control and manipulation of some aspect of that person's life, and use it that way. Which do you choose?
So the positive path would have the spiritual insight to just not say anything because it would confuse them, versus the negative path is saying something that wants them to control in a certain way. I guess everything you see also is there for a reason. It was made for service to self or service to others.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, look at are you familiar with Bible stories?
Yeah.
Okay, you know the story of King Herod and the babies, the massacre of the innocents.
Yeah.
The Egyptian
Okay, that is the perfect example of good information being used for service to self. He literally killed 30,000 babies because he was told by his astrologers that Jesus was going to be born.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can use it for either or. Watch Game of Thrones when the Red Witch tells the guy the things that she's been seeing. Yeah, she saw fire, she saw brimstone, she saw victory, but it wasn't the one he was assuming based on what she was telling him. She was telling him certain things a certain way that made him believe that he was going to be victorious. He wasn't. He got defeated. Got his ass handed to him. That's negative. I think of it this way. Whenever you're relying on information, especially to be hidden to obtain your goal, then you're leaning service to self. If you want all the information to be out on the table and everybody to know everything that's going on all the time and every aspect of your scenario, that's service to others.
Yeah. Yeah. Secrecy is service to self.
I don't know about that. I think service to other people. I don't know. I had this weird.
That's your mindset goal. That doesn't mean that's going to be puritanically the reality, but that's kind of your goal.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because all is one.
I got to interrupt real quick, though, that secrecy is not 100% service to self, because you may infringe upon free will. So you have to hold secrets if you know the infringement is possible. Secrecy.
Well, yes. Yeah. Yeah. If you don't want to infringe on, I mean, yeah. But I mean, yeah, I guess I meant to say.
I just don't want it to be a blanket statement, 100%.
Yeah, no,
fair enough.
You're
are no
exactly right, though, because I had information given to me about someone's paternity not being correct one time. That's none of my business to come up to the person and say, hey, I know your dad isn't your dad.
Yeah.
You know, that's none of my business to do. That to me is a breach of free will. Even though I have the information, me hiding it from them, I'm just minding my own business.
Yeah.
You know,
unless they ask you. If
Right.
they ask you, then it becomes, and then you decide to keep it secret, then that's service to self. But if you give them the information because they asked it, you're in alignment with their free will, you're giving them the correct information. The service to others is aligned with truth, giving the truth.
It's the asking of the question, and if you have to realize, are they asking that question?
But yeah, you also Robert makes a good point that there's no real absolutes. You always have to follow your heart. You can't just follow a rule book. There's no rule book for this. There's some trends, general trends, very general, with many exceptions. And the main thing is you have to follow your heart. Let God fill you with that love, and then decide and help you, pray that God helps you decide whatever is best for all creation, whatever is of service. And sometimes maybe that means being quiet, and sometimes that might mean speaking up.
Yep. The spirit of discernment is very important.
Yes.
Especially these days, like we talked about the rapidity of which things are being brought to the light right now. There are thousands of channelers out there right now. And you have to use your discernment to understand who is speaking of a higher truth and who is not. And
who's just speaking from themselves and wants attention.
It's amazing. And I have to say this because I'm the devil's advocate also. when Herod's killing or slaughter of the innocents was brought up, there is zero historical references outside of the Bible for that event. Just want to bring that up.
Oh wow.
You know what? I'm interested that you said that. I thought that there was a thing not too long ago where they did say that there was evidence of it.
Okay, there may be recent findings that I don't know of, yes. But it's
Yeah.
been my lifelong knowledge so far that no. It's
No,
only
I'm
something that
2017 or 18. It wants to ring a bell that something was discovered where it was mentioned in some other text somewhere.
Thank you. That's prompting me to look it up. I will do that. I appreciate your saying that. Thank you. Yeah.
Social memory complex in the making.
Insight. But imagine
there's no direct historical or archaeological evidence outside of the Gospel of Matthew. Many argue it would fit Herod's character. Oh, so there's some debate about it. The Roman historian Macrobius alluded to Herod's cruelty by mentioning that it was safer to be Herod's pig than his son. So, but yeah.
And it was only in the book of Matthew also.
Yeah.
So there was no congruency amongst the Gospels with the story, and it was only in the one, and there's no proof outside of it for that. So just the devil's advocate.
Fair enough. So let's have a look at the text that we wrote, at least the summary of it. So understanding irreconcilable points of view. The seemingly reconcilable points of view were both parties. Acknowledging that conflicts perspectives can lead to mutual frustration. Identifying. Just tell me, guys, if any of this resonates with you. Hostility, negativity.
Identifying hostility and negative intentions.
Mm-hmm.
That comes from misunderstandings of the situation. Now, okay, that's a good point to bring up and discuss, because we're all here old enough to have multiple various life experiences with this, where somebody's telling a story about something that happened, and you're like, no, that's not how it happened. I was there. It happened this way. And they're telling it from a point of view of truth, as in that's how they viewed it. So now you have a situation, say, where two people get divorced, and he says she was a narcissist and she says he was a narcissist. And each of them has their own viewpoints, but they share children. They're forced to maintain interaction indefinitely until, a certain time. How do you discern? Like, it's like what you were saying about choosing your fights, choosing your battles. There comes a point where negativity, and you're still recognizing each other as, creator. How do you bridge that gulf without breaching free will, without being negative yourself and depolarizing? How do you do that dance? How do you dance this dance? It's interesting.
There's a lot more questions in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't answer your question in the same paragraph. I can tell you that. It just keeps going. I'm trying to see.
That sounded like a story near and dear to your heart, though, Fred.
Yes. Well, we know exactly what's going on with Fred here, I think.
But it's not just me that experiences things like that.
I know, I agree.
It's very common.
Well, it's true. It's true. Yeah, like
I happen to be. I like extreme sports. I have extreme relationships.
Fair enough.
Like, you know what? I've caught myself having a problem if I'm telling somebody a story that happened in the past. I'm sometimes wondering if that was a dream I had or did it really happen. So I don't know if I'm lying or not sometimes, but am I lying if it was a dream? I don't know. It could have happened in another timeline or reality or whatever, you know?
I've had things happen and wrote them down and forgot about them, and years later found paperwork that I'm going through and seeing like dream journals and whatnot, and like, holy shit, I completely forgot that this even happened. Had I not wrote this down, I might that whole crazy, hilarious thing that happened would have been forgotten probably. So
So it seems like they are suggesting what I often do, which is offering the person the mirror. When they accuse you of something, then, in a gentle kind of way, offer them the mirror. And it's like, well, do you see that within yourself? um, and, kind of helping them work through that. And then also seeing that what you see in them is something that's within you. And then working on that. And so here, let's look at this quote that I felt was relevant. And those with deeper, shall we say, troubles in their being, even so as far as to say those who have deep fissures or splits within themselves, out of view of their conscious minds, yet struggle and toil within, may offer this in relationships to others, offering mirrors to others in the catalyst which they elicit. And they in turn are given mirrors back to themselves of their own state of being, of those areas where they are being called to work upon themselves, if they can but see the mirror for what it is, which is a reflection upon the self. So, yeah, and some of those who can and will look into the mirror recognize that it is a mirror reflecting back to the self the fruits of the self's works. Others instead see no mirror, but project outward, assigning to the external entities causal status of one's own reality. And then it goes on to talk about here, understanding the tail end of phenomenology of the experience being at war within the self, not understanding the self's responsibility at a deeper level of generating the state, nor of the self's ability to trace back to do the work in consciousness and to heal. So when people aren't using the mirror, they're putting themselves at a very disadvantageous position because they're not seeing the causal connection between what they're offering to the world and what the world is mirroring back to them.
So what that's saying is what I basically did is look at the situation coming from the other person and say, what in the hell am I doing to cause this?
Yes.
And looking at my own self, reverse engineering, and going, oh, it's because I'm doing X, Y, Z.
Yes.
If both parties did that, that gulf would disappear.
Yes. And I mean, if you're in a conversation with the other person, then you could bring that up.
And
that's how first responders come about, Andre. No.
What do you mean? Oh, I mean, I'm just saying that if there is such a thing, I'm not saying like to seek it out.
But that's what I mean. What when we're in 3D, it's not always. And this is part of my problem. Throughout my whole life, I've just been of that positive mindset that, oh, this other person I'm interacting with understands the concepts that I do just the same, probably, if not better. So I'm going to treat them this way. And then it ends up blowing up in your face.
Yeah, it's knowledge bias. And I'm guilty of it too.
Is that a wisdom balance thing?
Knowledge bias. So when you know something, it's difficult to even imagine that someone else doesn't know it. So I wanted to give Robert a chance, and then I wanted to relate a personal experience. Go ahead, Robert.
Thanks. I'm picturing, Fred, in the case that the scenario you brought up, since the two parties involved cannot amicably be doing this process, I would suggest you, we're going to say it's you, sitting in a chair, have another chair directly in front of you and project that person in that chair in your mind. And then focus on a true, idealized, perfect conversation between you two in a loving way, that you are mirroring each other in this conversation. And you're both reaching an agreement that this mirroring is happening and you can understand it. Find the agreement with the other person in your mind and in your heart, because you are a creator. Make that reality happen. But you have to focus on it deeply, clearly. Some people can't picture what an apple looks like. So if you're one of those individuals who cannot create an image in your mind, you'll have to figure out another way to do that. But figure out how to do that within yourself. And I know you can. I know you can. You are very talented. You're very spiritual. You have a good heart. You're loving. You can do this, man. You really can. You can make it a better situation without her being there.
I would have to agree with Robert, especially like I find that oftentimes if I know the Confederation talks about like before you go to bed to do a meditation to process any unprocessed catalyst that you may have acquired throughout the day. And sometimes, you know, I kind of like run through these scenarios in my mind of perhaps imagined scenarios, or perhaps they have some, you know, they're kind of catalysts of like that fourth density energies of those people's like kind of when I'm in that state between waking and sleeping, and then I can like almost feel their thoughts and how they feel about me, and then I can respond to them with that forgiveness, that love, and that kindness to help to mend those kinds of relationships and those difficult feelings, and that and all that. But I also want to give the counter example, you know, that it's not always possible because people have free will. And if they don't want to change, if they're not willing to listen, we just have to respect that. I know in my town, the vast majority, the 99.99% of people, I talk about love and light. They're very happy to hear it, forgiveness and love. But here, I'll give this one thing that happened yesterday. I was swimming across the bay, and then I got out, and then I often chat to the people that are sitting there. They're usually some of the people that are the hardest hit in our community because they're right outside the beer store. So they're alcoholics, you know, they're on drugs, they're kind of like the worst of the worst. And someone, and I noticed there was a gentleman there that I had talked to before who used to be on the west side of Owen Sound, and you know he had gone to church and things like that, but now he'd got caught up with these people, and then there's one guy that dislikes me in this whole town. His name is Curtis, and he doesn't like Jesus. And then he had a friend who also didn't want to hear about forgiveness and love, and they were trying to. They had gotten my friend on to buy cocaine from some dude, and then it turned out to be some fake cocaine. And then they were trying to convince him to go and break that guy's legs. And so I was like, you know, guys, we need to forgive, be kind to one another. And they were like, ah! And then I told them about Jesus and the parable of, and they were like, why should we forgive him? And then I told them about, you know, how there was the landlord and he forgave his tenant his debts. He didn't send him to jail. But then he heard how his tenant didn't forgive the debts of another person that owed him money and had beaten him. And so then the landlord put the man in jail until he would pay his debts. And so if and that dovetails with Jesus's commandment that forgive, or else you will not be forgiven. So forgive that you may be forgiven. And anyways, they didn't want to hear it, and they heckled me, and then they told me to leave. And as service to others, I have to go. But it's a public place, so I went a few meters down, and then they were still yelling at me, which is kind of rude. And so I just started singing praise to God. Praise be to God, and thank you for your provision. And I'm at the harbor, and so actually I'm at a very tall place, and so people from all across the harbor can hear me when I'm singing there. And after I had and then like I was singing, and as they were still heckling me, I continued singing. Eventually they got tired of heckling me and quieted down, and so I finished my song, that you are the creator of all that is. And then people clapped on the other side of the harbor. There was clapping.
You came back on your bicycle with a big bag of white powder and said, "Look, I found a big bag of this cocaine in the ditch down here. You should have went and singing with me."
Well, I don't know, but actually, I swam back across, and there was a boy on a bicycle there that wanted to talk to me because I think they had heard me singing and stuff, and so gave them a blessing and all that. So I had very positive experiences with everyone else.
But he didn't have any cocaine.
No, there was no cocaine. Because the thing is that when people are doing those drugs, they're seeking God, but in a roundabout way. Mm-hmm.
You can explain it, but
yeah. Well, it just if we reach God directly through meditation and love, then we just don't need those things.
Bashar calls them permission slips. It's supposed to be a very temporary thing. Mm-hmm. Basically, just to show you what you're able to attain on your own.
Yes, exactly. All right, so let's try and finish this this particular session so that just we finish not in the middle of a statement. So Robert, can you finish here? Are you there, Robert? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm seeing that it begins with the word wisdom on my screen here.
I thought we finished with has a difficult boundary.
I thought you switched to a different one for a moment.
Am I on the wrong?
No, you were flipping around a while.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, we ended with the word wisdom, which was right below where you had it highlighted.
Control F.
Wisdom.
This one?
Right there.
There we go.
All right, go ahead.
Homies on board. We got wisdom informed by love, may hold love for the self and the other self causing harm, recognizing each as the creator, but seeing that other self, while sharing a root identity and oneness, is upon a journey which only they can walk for themselves. Wisdom begins the recognition that one cannot do the learning for the other self, cannot walk in the other self's shoes. One can only offer catalyst in the hopes that the other self will take the outstretched hand in service to others, but they must make such a choice themselves. The other self cannot be forced to take the hand or to see what the self sees. So in balance, the love-wisdom balance that is, the third density entity may discern where it may be appropriate and healthy for the preservation of the self and its journey of learning to draw clearly demarcated boundaries, letting the other self know that they are not rejected in heart or judged or condemned as being less creator, less sacred than this self, but that their present set of behaviors and choices and ways of relating have impact upon the self and are harmful and deleterious. And thus it is out of a love for the self, which is the creator, which has service to offer, that the self must perhaps even regretfully, but nonetheless compassionately, draw such a boundary and create some seeming distance, you may say, even in some cases severing the, at least outward, relationship altogether, and learning to let go of those bonds and ties and tangles within that keep the self chained, shall we say, to this dynamic. This is not to release the other self into the gutter of life, for again, in the understanding of wisdom, is that the other self is responsible for the other self. They and they alone can only be responsible for themselves. It is simply to declare who and what the self is, and that the self is a being who is free to be in the light, to channel that light, to be of loving, open-hearted service to others, and that they may do so more freely and with greater integrity and wholeness, to not be siphoning their energy, even internally, to this depleting catalyst. They wish to be able to inhabit their heart space more fully, and may do so with greater integrity by releasing these bonds, which are determined to no longer serve the self and its well-being. It is an intricate and quite difficult dance, my friends. There is no one-size-fits-all formula. We share with you only principles that you may freely interpret and apply to the infinitely unique circumstances of your own journey. At this time, we would ask if there is a follow-up or a new question. We are those of Quo.
All right, great.
Thank you, Robert.
You are most welcome. I love doing that. Thank you, Quo, for letting me do so. Thank you guys for letting me.
So, yeah, thank you, Robert. Andre, what are demarcated boundaries?
Demarcated, that means they've been marked.
They've been set. They've been
Yeah.
verbally set, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
you say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm not going to eat unhealthy for but 3 days out of the week. And if my partner's not into that, then, you know, this won't work. You know, that's the kind of partner I'm looking for.
that sounds like experience too.
This is a tiny top of mind.
So yeah, dangers of love without wisdom. Because when I was giving it to the computer, there was that paragraph we didn't read this time, but apparently we read last time. Love unrelieved by wisdom may expend itself, may keep the borders, shall we say, of the self, of the energy system too open, such that those energies may be taken advantage of, may be exploited, or the self, in their own choices, may give of themselves to the point of deletion or depletion, and ultimately the martyr's path of ending the incarnation. That's what I was saying about, you know, if you love too freely, like, you might end up in martyrdom. Role of wisdom in love. So, I mean, like, for example, last year, I had a similar experience with this guy, Curtis, but he had a friend at the time who he was very drunk, and he decided to get violent, and he was running after me and trying to punch me out, and because I had talked about forgiveness and love. And so I jumped in the water. So I did not stick around long enough to get knocked out because I was trying to prove my unconditional love for all experiences. So there's that role of wisdom in love.
Adam had a question.
Oh, I just wanted to say that a few months later, that guy apologized to me.
Nice.
Because he saw that I had swam across the bay. He's like, oh, I don't want to mess with someone who swims across the bay or something. Well, that's what his explanation anyways, but hopefully there was more to it, like a spiritual
The guy's got some arms and a good cardio.
yeah. Yeah. You might be
I
able
was
to
sitting there
punch
thinking of
back.
like, how long is this bay? I'd love to try it with you, but I'm not sure I'd be able to make it. Like, I'm curious.
It's 100 meters across.
Oh,
300 feet.
I don't know. That is a good workout.
It takes me like 4 minutes.
It's the length of a football field.
I can't swim.
Oh well, then I guess it's not for you.
That's why I carry a 9mm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're in America. It's a different place.
Yeah,
over
yeah.
there.
Well, no, it's honestly, that as a potential tool when it's used properly, it equates all kinds of situations. You don't have to get bent out of shape just because if you have to defend yourself, you have a sidearm. And I've been in situations where that has allowed me to actually remain calm, literally, where nothing bad happened just because, and no one saw it. No one even knew I had it. You didn't have to go around showing it, brandishing it like you're John Wayne, but I have it in my back behind my hip. And I've actually been able to calm situations with people that were more than twice my size just by having the brazenness
That
because you have a sidearm.
reassurance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that alone, that's kind of what they're talking about here with mirroring. When someone's being irrationally, what would you call it? Ridiculous and bellicose, and you confront them calmly, with logic, and you're confronting them. So you are mirroring them. You're just mirroring them without, maybe screaming. So if that's able to sink in for a second, you diffuse the situation. And I actually have seen that happen. So if done properly, using wisdom, like they're saying, without unrelived by wisdom, if you apply wisdom the right way, and there's positive and negative use of wisdom too, because you can use wisdom against people, knowing how somebody's going to react by doing something. I don't know. There's different ways of doing it, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, here it talks about role of wisdom in love. Wisdom complements love by providing discernment and protecting personal boundaries. Wisdom informed by love may hold love for the self and the other self, causing harm, recognizing each as the creator. Wisdom begins the recognition that one cannot do the learning for the other self, cannot walk in the other self's shoes. One can only offer catalyst in the hopes that the other self will take the outstretched hand in service to others, but they must make the choice themselves. So, for instance, when I offer, Jesus and forgiveness and love, I'm offering a catalyst. But if they say no, well, that's it. There's nothing else more I can do at that point. Establishing healthy boundaries. The setting a clear boundaries is essential for maintaining personal integrity and well-being. The third density entity may discern where it may be appropriate and healthy for the preservation of the self and its journey of learning to draw clearly demarcated boundaries. And compassionate separations, creating distance from harmful dynamics in an act of self-love, not rejection of the other. Create some seeming distance, as you may say, even in some cases severing the at least outward relationship altogether and learning to let go of those bonds and ties and tangles. So there you go. Does that make sense? Or
I suppose.
did we want to go back more into the original? It might have more text there.
And it always makes more sense if you can apply it. Something in real life happening, that's how you know if you really learn something too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's part of the reason why we don't get these things until we reach certain ages in our lives, because we don't have the experience to apply the archetypes to.
True. Yeah. Right.
You got to work a certain number of jobs and be forced to go to Walmart a certain number of times and forced to see a certain number of elections to understand certain things just happen, and There are certain people that choose to be ignorant. There are people that choose negative things knowing that it's not in their best interest or whatever. That you still have to, share the road with. You still have to go to the grocery store right next to them. You're not going to get away with it unless you become a hermit.
And you said the correct phrase for how my experience was: share the road. I drove taxi cab for 3 years in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh boy.
That's 50 hours a week for 3 years, dealing with, all of them were basically, majority were tourists and with a nice mix of locals. Many of the locals were prostitutes. So I was dealing with people. I was doing my best to be non-judgmental and showing compassion and offering some sort of information which may help them. Seeing these attractive young women starting jobs in a strip joint, and like their first night there, one of the other girls gives them methamphetamine and says, this will help you. It's like, oh my God, little lady, that's the path of destruction you're on. I would suggest you look at that more carefully.
Hightail it out of there.
Yeah.
But what do you do? Really, what do you
can't do anything? You can't do anything. You can only offer your insight and give them love. And
please don't do that in my cab.
That's illegal. It was illegal to tell them not to do something.
Oh, wow.
They're allowed to smoke anything they want to smoke, drink anything they want to do, have as much sex as they want to have with anyone in the cab, including the driver.
Really? Okay, well then.
While he's driving. So yeah, it was an intense experience, and I survived. So
amazing. So this quote, it really resonates with me anyways. This is not to release the other self into the gutter of life. For again, the understanding of the wisdom is that the other self is responsible for the other self, and they alone can only be responsible for themselves. It is simply to declare who and what the self is, and that the self is a being who is free to be in the light, to channel that light, and to be loving and open-hearted service to others, and that they may do so more freely and with greater integrity and wholeness, to not be siphoning their energy, even internally, to this depleting catalyst. They wish to be able to inhabit their heart space more fully, and may do so with greater integrity by releasing these bonds which are determined to no longer serve the self and its well-being. So basically, how that resonates with me is that, like there's some people that, reject Jesus Christ and or forgiveness and love, and me respecting their boundaries or whatever, as I'm not releasing to the gutter of their life. They made that choice. And in terms of Fred, if the individual is they're on a different path and they're not in a heart focused path, and you are, then it's totally reasonable for you to have your own space where you can follow that heart path, and they're following their path, which I understand is different.
And this is important too. What they said was about siphoning your energy, because that's where boundaries come in, where you're understanding that they're on the same path. I guess that they're on their own path, and you can't make decisions for them. So to protect your own energy from being siphoned, you have boundaries, because you can't do your best work if you have your energy depleted by being around negative things that do you no service.
Exactly.
It acts like a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's not doing it willfully even necessarily. It's just, it is what it is, and that's how it functions. So if you know not to plant the beans with the corn, don't plant the beans with the corn.
And there are times if you walk into it, like if you ever were at a party with, like, let's say 12 people in a room, and you walk in there and you all of a sudden feel like energy being sucked out of you. And the closer you get to a certain individual, like you'll get a stronger feeling of that. Even there are some people who are just like trying to suck it in, like the service to self.
Yeah, the service to self people.
They're trying to centralize the energy within themselves only. So they're like sucking it in. And they will.
Yeah.
I know when it would be a bunch of my kids and my friends or whatever would be together, and a certain individual would come, and it was like someone literally threw a wet blanket on the campfire.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was like instant, like, oh, what does this person want? You know, just that siphoning energy. They could just, that, I don't know. There's certain people that do that. And then there's the opposite, where once that person shows up, it's like everyone knows their laugh, everyone knows their energy, they're bouncing off the walls. And it's like they almost have a mental problem. They're so happy.
I know people would often tell me I was the life of the party, you know, whenever I was at a party or whatever.
Well, good. You weren't the energy vampire then.
Yeah, then you weren't the wet blanket.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's just as service to others, we're the ones that are supposed to be radiating love and joy and kindness. And I mean, that's because and it's not of us. It comes from God and from connecting with, you know, as Adam was talking about, the earth, Schumann resonance. You know, we're channeling the infinite creator. We're channeling the earth. And that's why we have this energy, and it's energy to be of service to others and to be loving and to be kind. And that's why there's so much of it. And it's actually when there are people that are listening, that are receiving, I have way more energy to give because it's coming through me. And I am often happier about the message that is coming out because I have people to communicate with. Like, if I wasn't in this room with you guys and we weren't discussing these questions, I wouldn't have said anything at all this evening, right? And so
and when you do that, it helps you sometimes understand what you're even talking about more.
Yes, certainly.
Teach, learn, teach.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know, like, when there's like a big audience, like I can really feel it. Like sometimes, like I'm like reverberating with all of the energies because, like sometimes I remember there was an evangelical meetup, and there were like 1,000 people in the room, and I happened to be in a really good place next to the ceiling, so that when I was singing, like everyone could hear me, even though I didn't have the microphone or whatever. And like I could just feel like the people that could hear my voice connecting with that, and that loving, you know, it was loving lyrics that was connecting with them, and like I could like feel like intertwining with their energies and help healing them and smoothing out their energies and things like that. And like similarly, like when I attend like the Great County Council, like I hear the counselors talking, and then like I can like feel their energies as they're doing that, and then I can like help like soothe them, you know, like I can feel like sometimes, you know, while they're saying one thing, but they still have like these stresses from, you know, maybe, you know, the other things that were happening and the other relationships that they had, you know. And so I'm just like, you know, helping to heal those aspects of themselves so that they may be more still and more kind and more at peace, at least while they're in the county council, and hopefully bringing that back to their municipality as well.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for your service you do with others on your journeys everywhere you go, it sounds like.
Well, thank you. Yes. I mean, we can all aim to do that. I mean, we all have the infinite creator within us.
But we all are also on a unique path. Your gifts and abilities aren't necessarily mine. And, you know, we're each doing our own thing. But yeah, you're a good exemplar. You're a good role model.
Well, thanks. And you know what? You did a great thing too, Robert. Like from what I could tell, you were being compassionate and kind to those people. in Vegas, which is like, I mean, there's a lot of different names for it. But like, it's like the pit of hell or whatever. It's like the Sodom and Gomorrah of,
Oh, I had to use that term once, Sodom and Gomorrah. As a woman was groping me, and I asked her if she knew that story. She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, I'm one of those who's helping prevent it from happening again."
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I did. I had to say that.
You're like Lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And imagine trying to be compassionate and non-judgmental while driving in traffic.
Yeah.
On the strip, 3 lanes north and southbound and filled with California drivers. It's a test of one's true integrity, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You got your intense catalyst and your city miles all at the same time.
Yeah, right. I got to ask Andre something.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have to answer if you don't really feel so inclined, of course. The more excuse me, it's a lot of pollen in the air here. The more or less biblical view of demons, like Jesus casting the demons out of the man, scraping himself with potsherds, and all these demons go into the herd of pigs and jump off a cliff. Do you picture that as being a reality, like in our world, demons like that?
I would say that would be highly exceptional and very, very, very rare, if anything. And it would require a large amount of concerted effort by individuals in order to achieve that kind of embodying of spirits. And I mean, maybe that's what was happening at the time of Jesus. I mean, because there were lots of like occult things going on.
It was an intense time. Very.
I want to point out something, and this, I don't mean to keep harping on Bible stories, but I taught adult Bible Sunday school for several years, so I I remember a lot of it, and I specifically remember that story, Robert, and I want to. You piqued my curiosity. Now I'm going to reread it again with the re-understanding of what Ross mentioned about the fourth density beings. Remember when they were talking about the cattle mutilations and the fourth density beings and everything, how sometimes they phase into R3D to do certain things or whatever, and they do things like that, and they can't actually harm us in any way. And I want to reread it with those thoughts in mind, because you have things like Skinwalker Ranch and everything, where there's pockets in our earth. And this goes back to what we were talking. You said something about the ley lines and everything before, where different densities and different energies and different egregoric type thought forms perform different things at different times in our timeline. So there could have been some crazy shit going. Might have to look at the astrology of that timeline. I don't know when that actually occurred. There would be a lot of different investigative things you would have to do to find out an answer to that. But I would think it would have something more to do along the lines of a 3D, 4D shifting type energy going on. And maybe it was causing people that were sensitive to that problems, leprosy, whatever, and causing them to do certain things. And that could have expelled any type of energy he was being receptive to at the time, changing his core vibration, which wouldn't allow it to come back and affect him.
So yeah, I want to say that the majority of Jesus's healings seem to be related to sin, like in terms of that the person was not processing catalyst, and they were so burdened down that it turned into disease. And then Jesus would say, "Your sins are forgiven you. Go and sin no more." And with the ideal that they would be forgiving and loving and kind and following Jesus' commands. Now, but in terms of the demon thing, I know actually a person that lives Nero and Sound, and they actually have a church, and that they're actually part of the NAR, which is the New Apostolic Reformation, and their main focus is demons and casting out demons. And actually, this particular pastor, he's obsessed with demons. Everything is demons. Everyone is full of demons. Demons are everywhere. And so because he's giving all of this energy to it, he's actually surrounded by them. He's surrounded by them all the time, and he brings them, they follow him. And then they appear on the people that he's next to, and then he's like, you have a demon. And so because he's carrying them around, because he's giving them attention, he's making them more real by giving them more attention.
Talk about job security.
Yeah. So and like, I mean, if you look into the New Apostolic Reformation, like a lot of it is hypnotism, and like they have these things called deliverance ministries where people pay for this, and then like they basically vomit in a room and then they've been delivered. Then, you know, they hypnotize them into feeling like they're possessed, and then they get all, you know, do a little dance, and then they vomit, and then they have to do this every 3 to 4 months. But anyways, it's not actually helpful, but it's how they make money. But you know, like we've discussed in previous sessions, that the appropriate or the service to others way of dealing with negative greetings is through praising God and gratitude and love and kindness, because that chases away, and then also the feeling that all is one, and remembering, you know, like Jesus said, and like in the Bible it says that even the demons fear the name of the Lord. You know,
right? Well, that's in one of the Paul scriptures, but yeah,
and
doctrine according to Paul.
And but also when Jesus was talking, was being tempted by the devil. I think there was some allusion to that as well.
And he called Peter Satan once too.
Yeah, and really the I think Satan has just been mistranslated. The original meaning is adversary.
Right.
Yeah, so he was just saying adversary. Get behind me, adversary. And the temptation was, those were the actual temptations. He was not saying that there was some kind of Satan, which is a nemesis of all evil. He was not necessarily giving credence to that. He was just saying that these were adversarial thoughts that he had at the time, and he was asking them to get behind him.
Right. Including his temptations in the desert too, though, were just adversarial thoughts, not an actual entity.
Exactly. So when we subsume all as one, you know, that doesn't work for negatively polarizing entities, because if we're grateful to them, then they're not polarizing service to self.
Right. And another thing I find fascinating about Yeshua was when he would be casting demons. This is in the book of Mark, especially, because that's the one I read more than the others. Mark, he commands them to not say who he is. As he's getting rid of the demon from the person, he is commanding it to not speak his name and to not say who he is and what he's doing. I find that fascinating. It's just...
I'm not sure what you're referring to, Fred. Do you know what?
You'd have to read it in Mark.
Oh, it's in Mark. Okay.
Yeah, I would that be because he doesn't want it to be declared in his name, because he doesn't if you read a lot of the red print, and when we're reading the things that Jesus said himself, he's very careful with how he words that it isn't him doing the miracle, that this is, you know, God doing this, and your faith has healed you. I think that's one of those preventative things.
That makes sense. Yeah, he's commanding the so-called demon to not attribute this to him.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That does make sense. Yeah.
Because you also got to remember that's heavily translated. Translating to English is butcherous.
Yeah.
Right.
So here, this is the Young's literal translation of the temptation. This is the last one. And then Jesus said to him, "Go, adversary, for it hath been written, the Lord thy God thou shalt bow to, and him only thou shalt serve." He's telling the adversary that they serve God, and only them shall they serve. At least that's how I interpret it. And it just goes to show that everyone is subservient to God. And I mean, the book of Job also, the devil didn't do anything without God's permission.
Exactly. And he was at the throne of God, which means he's in quote unquote heaven.
On the left hand.
Yeah,
whereas
but he's
Jesus is
in
on the right.
heaven. People
Yes.
keep harping on him being in hell. He's in heaven.
Right. So yeah, but yeah, I'm
I
not
thought
sure.
there was a layer of hell that's called heaven.
All right. Well,
No,
we're about half an hour
That's all made up.
past our time here.
When you follow the doctrine of Paul, you start to get hell, and then you get the Catholic Church, and then you get the frickin' chaos the world is right now.
Yeah, it's important to see it all through the lens of Jesus, and then
that's only without the doctrine of Paul, though. The four Gospels, James and Jude.
Right. Yep.
That's it.
Paul has some good things to say. I have
But
to
he
say,
admits to having an evil within him.
yes, he also had some things that can be used inappropriately. But
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
in my Mennonite church, that we've reviewed many of Paul's writings, and at least the ones we've reviewed dovetail very well with Jesus' teachings.
Well, you also have to remember Paul's life experience. He was in prison a lot, you know, and I don't know if you've ever imagined in your mind a prison in Roman times for, heresy or, going against state religious practices. But
I thought Paul was born like 300 years after Jesus.
No, he was.
But
He never met
you
Christ
would
in the flesh, but it was just a little after.
you would imagine that at that time he would probably have experienced some very, very macabre, debaucherous, sodomistic treatment while in prison. And for anyone to imagine that happening for years and not having it have a psychological effect on your filter of knowledge from the creator, you would have to be silly,
Right.
because that all affects your filter. And when you're mistreated in that capacity, don't have the tools like we have with, look at the internet. Oh, we're just spoiled with tools. They had no tools for self-help, no tools for enlightenment or help of any nature, literally in the hell of being told, you're all wrong, you're in prison for it because you're so stupid, blah, blah, blah. And still going through with it, that to me is commendable.
Yeah.
Well,
and
he has been considered to be an extreme narcissist suffering from PTSD. Yeah.
Well,
you got to remember the Bible doesn't have the same disclaimer that the LNL channeling does, and it should. That if it doesn't resonate with you, leave it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But don't forget what Paul was before the road to Damascus conversion. He was a serial killer. He hunted down Christians and murdered them.
Yes.
Hunted them down and murdered them. He
was a Pharisee. Killer. He was a Jewish Pharisee.
He killed hundreds, probably. So, yeah, there's a lot to be doubted in what he has brought to us because of him we have the Catholic Church.
Well, they actually descend from Peter.
But James was the one Jesus assigned to be his follower, his
But
brother,
James only converted after Jesus died.
according to Catholics.
Well, okay.
There's that gulf of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
There's a period of time where the evil ones had their chance to change it, and they did a wonderful job. We must love them immensely for their incredible aptitudes in doing so.
Yeah, I wanted to share this with you guys so that I actually made these outreach flyers, Anabaptist / Diet. And so for red letter Jesus, for Catholics in catechisms, for the Orthodox, which is almost just like the disciple one, and for Pauline dispensationalists. So if you are having some trouble reaching some Catholics, you don't have to write them off. You can give them this, and it will hopefully help shed some light on them.
What is the Pauline of disassociates?
Dispensationalists. Pauline dispensationalists, they believe that Jesus's teachings are that the church started after Jesus died, and so we don't have to listen to anything he said, and we should just see what Paul said because he's the first true Christian.
A man who never met Jesus.
Yes, well, except on the road to Damascus.
That's his
imagination.
That's
yes, except in his imagination.
But he never met the man Jesus. And the apostles who did, like Brother James and Peter and others, were against Paul. They railed against him. They said he was misleading the churches.
Well, I have found that
started right at the beginning, a huge schism, and it's a shame that the STS team were given so much power.
Well, the funny thing is, even with all of the books that they've excluded now from the canonical Bible that we're accepted as the Bible, it spells it all out for us. So if you have the discernment to read it like what we can do now, like what you're doing, you can see how they just actually spell it out. We did this. So,
Yeah. Yeah, they do. That is the funny thing. It's like that hidden hand document. The STS crew, they don't do everything 100% secretive. There's that 5% that they allow you to know what they're up to.
Well, it ties into something a thought that I had about that, in that Sirius STS does not really create anything. They take something that STO has created and they pervert it.
Yeah. Right.
And that gives them permission to have it because of consensus permission.
Right.
They only have to give you that 5% for them to have permission consensually, consensively to have it and for it to be manifested, because they don't create anything. They don't do anything with love.
Well, the 5% I'm saying though is there are 5% STO, and that's when they will admit to having created something.
Well, I think a good example, but yeah, we really have to round this up, but is the Troy. So Troy, yes. So before the Trojan horse, there was Sinan, who was the brother of Odyssey, who showed up at the door and said, please let me be a refugee. And then he became the advisor to the king, which is nominally service to others. And so when the Trojan horse showed up, he told them that, this is a Trojan horse. I mean, he didn't say this is a Trojan horse. This is a horse. And and at the time, the Troy people had looked out, they saw that the Greek encampment was gone and all the ships were gone. And so they were asking Sinan, well, what does this mean? Why is there a horse here? Why is everyone gone? And he said, well, they were tired of all the fighting, and so they left. And this horse is just one of their rituals where if it stays outside the walls, then they will have a good, the storms will have mercy on them. But if you bring the horse inside the wall, then all of their ships will sink. And they decided to listen to Sinan, even though Cassandra had, prophecies that this would be a doom if they bring in the horse. And well, the rest of the Trojan horse story.
Yeah.
And so the service to self entities, they often come in the guise of, oh, just get us in there and we will protect you. For instance, the what's the name? Orion Empire. There was Jason Rice, and he had a very similar story. That how they would work is they would go to a planet and they would say, "Hey, there's this army of creatures that are coming, and they're going to invade your planet. So how about you take some of our dudes, and they will help you fend them off." And now, if they did not accept these dudes for protection services, then there would be no invasion. But they were like, oh, you're just giving us a free gift of these protectors? Sure. And so when they got the free gift of the protectors, what happens is that they would, then they could begin the invasion. Because the protectors were part of the Orion Empire, and they would form a hierarchy where everyone was subservient to the protectors while they were fighting off the invasion of the robot alien hybrids. And anyone that wasn't under their hierarchy died from the robot alien hybrids.
And you just perfectly described what channels are saying recently. There's a high probability vortex building up within this coming year of a threat of alien invasion. There's going to be that threat thrust upon society in a really strong fashion, not 1950s horror movie only. It's going to be like the 1950s horror movie happening in real life kind of scenario.
Well, they might try, but I think so many people have seen through it. They're like, oh, there's just Project Bluebeam.
Well, but the way it's going to be done is so much different than a 1950s horror movie because of what we have now. The technology, everything we have at our disposal. Invisibility cloaks freaking out there right now. There's a lot of stuff, and there's technology you don't know about that militaries are using. So just let you know, it's gonna happen probably.
I understand. I think it's going to happen too, but probably totally not in a way that we even think yet, even right now, because the problem up against that is if it's portrayed in a 1950s horror film type of way, you immediately have an abandonment of the sense of nationality. And if people in charge of government entities have an entire populace who is the only reason have permission to even be in position, completely abandon the idea or concept of their need for their existence, they got a problem.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't just be in one place at one time. If one first world country did that, it would trickle down instantly. Within an hour, you would have chaos all over the globe.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with that, you're playing with fire of a mass proportion. that no weapon could even come close to. So doing it in a very delicate but deliberate and kind of making you think fearful way would be the best tactic, I would think, because you would want the people in the middle ground, the people that were in that what do you call it, that no man's land, to just kind of like be happy go lucky. Okay, haha, there's aliens, yay. But the people that are actually very intelligent, very negative, and very intelligent, very positive, actually are the ones that are going to be thinking the negative thoughts, because that way you're going to keep things under control in mass. But the people that are actually doing the stuff and making the decisions are going to be the ones with the second thought in the back of their mind of, are they controlling us? Are they manipulating us? Are they changing our DNA? There's going to be something else.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Very.
Well, we'll see what happens. We've
will.
heard many of these predictions before. So.
Yeah, well, for sure.
All right. So as we found you, we leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth therefore rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai. The one within you.
Go in peace to love and serve